The rooftop restaurant shimmered with glass and gold, its polished tables glinting under the soft amber glow of the city skyline. Soft jazz drifted through the air, mingling with laughter, clinking wine glasses, and the rustle of linen napkins. At a corner table, Vincent Langford sipped his third glass of 2005 Merlot, the warmth of alcohol doing little to settle the cold hollowness that had followed him for years. He was surrounded by wealth, waiters in black vests, a violinist near the bar, and a view that stretched from uptown towers to the slums barely visible beyond the edge. He liked the height. Up here, it was easy to pretend the world below didn't exist. Until she walked in. No one saw her at first. Not really. The staff paused, confused. Patrons wrinkled their noses in unison. She was too quiet, too thin, too ragged to belong among silk and seafood towers. Her hoodie was frayed at the cuffs, her jeans worn at the knees. But it was her eyes that made Vincent freeze. She moved cautiously, head down, hands clasped in front of her as if she didn't want to take up space. A busboy stepped toward her, but she ignored him. She made her way straight to Vincent's table. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir," she said softly. "I was wondering, may I have your leftovers?" Her voice trembled, but her posture stayed upright. Her gaze met his, and in that moment time cracked. Elise. The name burst through Vincent's mind like thunder. It wasn't possible. Elise had been gone 5 years. Vanished. But this girl, she had the same almond-shaped eyes, the same subtle tilt of the chin, the same quiet fire simmering just beneath the surface. Vincent stared, stunned. He blinked once, then twice, but her face didn't change. "Please," she added, gesturing toward the half-finished steak and untouched risotto on his plate. "I'm not asking for money. Just the food." He didn't respond. His mouth had gone dry. The fork in his hand trembled slightly before he set it down. "Sit," he finally said. The word surprised even him. She shook her head. "I can't. Just the food." Vincent grabbed a fresh plate and began scooping everything onto it with slow precision. His hands moved on autopilot. His thoughts, however, spiraled. Where had she come from? Who was she really? A ghost? A scam? A setup? He slid the full plate toward her. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "It doesn't matter." But it did. He watched her retreat, clutching the plate like a precious gift, slipping through the crowd like smoke. Murmurs followed her, but she didn't look back. Vincent remained frozen, eyes fixed on the space she'd left behind. Elise had been a maid, quiet, beautiful. She had worked in his brother's estate. And one night, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind a broken mirror, a trail of blood, and a rumor no one wanted to touch. She had been pregnant. Vincent pushed his chair back suddenly, the legs scraping against stone. He threw several bills on the table and walked to the edge of the terrace, scanning the street below. The girl was gone. Gone. Again. But this time he wouldn't ignore it. He wouldn't look the other way. The dead didn't come back. But if this girl was who he feared she might be, then the past hadn't stayed buried, not even close. Vincent pulled out his phone and opened an old contact, someone he hadn't spoken to in 5 years. His finger hovered over the screen. This wasn't coincidence, this was a message, and someone, somewhere, wanted him to remember. Vincent Langford stood in the middle of his penthouse living room, staring at nothing. The lights were dimmed, the windows stretched floor to ceiling, and the rain outside trailed down the glass like slow, deliberate tears. He hadn't removed his coat. The Merlot from the rooftop restaurant still lingered faintly on his breath, but the chill running down his spine had nothing to do with alcohol. Her eyes. That girl's eyes. They had pierced straight through the wall he'd spent years building. She hadn't just looked like Elise. She had felt like her. The cadence of her voice, the restraint in her posture, the quiet fight beneath her dignity. Vincent had never believed in reincarnation, but he'd seen ghosts before, and tonight he was certain he had just met one. He walked to the fireplace, lit it with the press of a button, and stood watching the flames crackle to life. The fire didn't warm him. It only lit the edges of a memory he had tried too long to forget. Elise. The maid with the soft smile and the bruises she never talked about. She had worked at Martin's estate for 3 years, always in the background, always too quiet. Vincent hadn't really noticed her until she was gone. He turned and crossed to the bookshelf, sliding open a hidden panel behind the worn leather volumes. A locked drawer clicked open. Inside were documents, photographs, a single gold earring, and at the bottom, a letter Elise had written to herself but never mailed, folded tightly, tear-stained. Vincent sat on the edge of the couch, unfolded the letter, and began to read again. If something happens to me, no one will ask why, because no one ever does. But if anyone ever finds this, please know I was trying to protect someone who didn't ask to be born. His chest tightened. She had told him once in a whisper that she had made a mistake. A man she shouldn't have trusted. Someone powerful. Martin. Vincent had suspected it then. He was sure of it now. He reached for his laptop, heart pounding, and opened a private folder he hadn't accessed in years. EL case. There were time-stamped emails, notes from an old investigator he had hired after Elise vanished. But nothing had led to answers, just dead ends. Martin had shut it all down. An accident, he'd claimed. She ran away. Probably took money with her. Vincent had wanted to believe that, needed to. But something about that night, the silence in the halls, the blood on the stairwell, the coldness in Martin's voice, never sat right. And now, 5 years later, a girl had walked up to his table with Elise's face and asked for his leftovers. Coincidence didn't feel like the right word. It felt like an invitation, or a warning. Vincent clicked on one of the old surveillance files from the estate, grainy footage from the servants' hallway the night Elise vanished. She walked past the camera at 11:48 p.m. Her silhouette was unmistakable. A second later, another figure passed behind her. Tall, male, face obscured by shadow. He had paused the footage 100 times over the years, but tonight, something stood out. The girl from the restaurant. She had the same walk, that gentle sway. A slight, limp Elise had gotten after slipping down marble steps 3 winters ago. He hadn't imagined it. He couldn't have. He shut the laptop with a snap, the letter still clutched in his hand. There was only one way to know. Find her again. And this time, he wouldn't walk away without answers. It took Vincent 2 days to find her. He scoured the security. Footage from businesses near the restaurant, paid off a club doorman who remembered the homeless girl with the quiet eyes, and followed a trail of vague sightings that led him deeper into the city's forgotten corners. On the 3rd morning, just as dawn broke over the brick sprawl of the East District, he found her in a narrow alley behind an old bakery. She was sitting cross-legged on the cold concrete, tossing scraps of bread to pigeons gathered at her feet. A stray dog slept, near her, curled against her legs like they belonged to each other. Vincent approached cautiously, his footsteps crunching broken glass and wet leaves. She didn't flinch, didn't turn. "I told you I didn't want attention," she said softly, still feeding the birds. He stopped a few feet away. "And yet here we are." She looked up, eyes tired but unafraid. "Did you come to arrest me for begging?" "No." He shook his head. "I came to ask you a question." She tore another piece of bread and tossed it toward the dog. "And if I don't answer?" "I'll leave you alone," Vincent said. "For good." That made her pause. He crouched slowly, bringing himself level with her. The dog lifted its head but didn't growl. "I've seen those eyes before," Vincent said. "Years ago." Her name was Elise. The girl's fingers twitched mid-toss. Her breath caught. "I don't know anyone named Elise," she said quickly. Too quickly. Vincent studied her, the way her jaw clenched, how her hands suddenly fidgeted, with the torn hem of her hoodie. "She disappeared 5 years ago," he continued, gently. And she was pregnant. Silence. The pigeons fluttered, one taking off. The girl looked down at the dirt near her boots. Some people trust the wrong men, she murmured. Vincent's voice grew quieter. Who was it? She shook her head. He leaned in. Is Elise your mother? She stood abruptly, brushing crumbs from her jeans. I don't answer to that name. Then give me yours. She stared at him. Her silence wasn't empty. It was armored, a wall he wouldn't breach unless she let him. I have a name, she finally said. But it doesn't matter. Not in a city where names get people killed. Vincent rose too, the cold air sharp between them. If someone's after you, I can help. I don't want your help. Her voice cracked slightly, though her eyes never wavered. He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded slip of paper. He offered it without pushing. This is the address of a hotel. Room 312. It's yours for the week. Clean bed, hot water, no questions. She didn't take it, but she didn't walk away either. Vincent stepped back. If you change your mind, he said, leave a note with the name Elise at the front desk. I'll get it. As he turned to leave, her voice followed him. She trusted him, she said almost too quietly. She thought he loved her. Vincent stopped, pulse pounding. She was wrong. He didn't turn back. He couldn't. Not yet. But as he walked away, the certainty grew in his chest. If this girl wasn't Elise's daughter, she carried her memories like a scar. And scars never lie. Vincent hadn't thought about that night in years, hadn't let himself. But after seeing the girl in the alley, after hearing her say she trusted the wrong man, the past had clawed its way back to the surface. He stood, now at the edge of the long driveway leading to the Langford estate, the mansion looming before him like a mausoleum. The house had changed hands since then, sold off and stripped of the Langford name. But in his memory, every window still glowed with warmth and illusion. Every corridor still echoed with footsteps and things left unsaid. The night Elise vanished had been cold. Not the kind of cold that bites, but the kind that settles under. The skin, quiet, heavy, final. Vincent had arrived late to his brother's winter fundraiser. The ballroom buzzed with laughter, charity masks, and champagne flutes. Elise was there, moving like a shadow between guests, carrying trays and avoiding eye contact. She always wore her hair tucked behind one ear. That night it was down. He'd noticed. Too late. Later, long after the final guests had staggered out and the last of the glasses had been cleared, he remembered standing in the marble foyer, about to leave, when he heard it. A thump, then a muffled cry. He followed the sound into the west corridor where the lights flickered as if holding their breath. And there, at the base of the servants' staircase, he saw it. Blood. A sharp smear across the bottom step. A broken pearl necklace scattered like teeth across the floor. Vincent had knelt, touched the pearls, felt the faint warmth of something recently alive. He remembered the silence that followed, a silence so unnatural, it rang in his ears. Then, Martin appeared. His older brother's shirt was untucked, the top buttons missing. A thin cut traced his cheekbone. His expression was blank, too blank. What happened? Vincent asked. Martin's voice had been steady. Cold. She slipped, he said. Stupid girl wasn't watching her step. Vincent had looked back at the blood. Where is she? Gone. I had someone take her to a clinic. But there's no car. I said I handled it. Vincent hadn't believed him. But he hadn't fought him either, and that's what haunted him. The next day, Elise was gone. Her room was cleared. Her things vanished. No police report, no hospital record, nothing. Martin insisted she'd quit and left without warning. Unstable, he called her. Dramatic. He made her sound like a liability, not a person. Vincent had wanted to dig deeper. He even hired a private investigator, but Martin's lawyers shut it down in a week. Threats were made, assets frozen. Vincent backed off. He told himself Elise had run away, that she wanted to disappear. But now, 5 years later, he stood in front of the estate's locked gates, gripping the memory of her voice, her kindness, her unspoken fear. She hadn't run. She had been erased. Back in his car, Vincent opened the old file he'd once buried in encrypted folders. There, beneath bank statements and photographs, was the surveillance clip, the one he had watched 100 times and still didn't understand. 4:08 p.m. Elise walked down the corridor, her steps hurried. She clutched something to her chest. Her eyes darted behind her. 4:09 p.m. Martin followed, calm, unbothered. 12:03 a.m. A cleaner entered the hallway with a mop and a bucket. The blood was gone in minutes. Vincent stared at the screen, every frame a confession that never made it to court. The girl in the alley, Elise's daughter, he was now sure of it, wasn't just running from poverty. She was surviving the aftermath of a cover-up. A cover-up Vincent had once let happen. And if Martin had lied about that, what else had he buried? Vincent closed the laptop. The fire in his chest was no longer grief. It was purpose. He wasn't going to the police, not yet. He was going to Martin. And this time, he wouldn't be asking. The sun had barely risen when Vincent spotted her again. She slipped out of the alley behind the bakery, hoodie pulled up, backpack slung over one shoulder. She moved quickly, weaving between street vendors and early commuters like a shadow too practiced to be noticed. Vincent followed from a distance, dressed down in a hoodie and cap. He wasn't proud of the surveillance, tailing a girl who couldn't be more than 17, but something inside him refused to let go. She was the key to everything Elise had left unsaid. She didn't head downtown or toward a shelter. She moved east, past the cracked roads and hollowed storefronts of the industrial zone where the city forgot to clean up after itself. Vincent watched her slip through a rusted gate and disappear into a condemned warehouse tagged in graffiti and silence. He waited, breath shallow, then approached the side wall, where a panel hung loose. Inside, the building was a skeleton of old beams and concrete dust. Light filtered through shattered windows. Faint voices echoed. Other kids, teenagers mostly, huddled in corners with blankets and scavenged food, sharing warmth like currency. Vincent moved slowly, careful not to step on glass. Then he saw her. She was alone in a far-off room, standing near a broken mirror, her back to him. Her hoodie was down, revealing messy hair tied at the nape. She opened her backpack, pulled something from a side pocket, and stared at it in her palm. A gun. Small. Silver. Not a toy. She turned it over in her hands, as if studying a language written in steel. Her jaw was set. Calm. She didn't look afraid. She looked ready. Vincent ducked behind a pillar, heart hammering. His breath hitched. She wasn't just surviving. She was preparing. He peeked again. She raised the gun and pointed it at her reflection, steady, both arms locked, like she'd practiced. Not in anger, in discipline. He stepped back too fast. A piece of plaster cracked underfoot. She spun around. "Who's there?" she called, voice sharp. He froze. "Come out, now." Vincent stepped into view slowly, hands raised. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You followed me?" "I wanted to make sure you were safe. I don't need saving." "I didn't say you did." Her grip on the gun didn't loosen. "So what do you want? You think you can walk into my life, flash hotel keys, and pretend you're not part of all this?" "I'm trying to help," he said quietly. "No." Her voice dropped. "You're trying to feel better." They stared at each other for a long moment. Vincent nodded at the gun. "That's not for protection, is it?" She said nothing. He took a step closer. "You planning something?" Her hand trembled slightly now. "If I was, would it matter?" "It would matter to your mother," he said. Her lips parted. Pain flickered across her face. "I knew her," he said softly. "I cared about her. I didn't protect her, but I can try to protect you." Her arm slowly lowered. The gun dropped to her side. "I don't need protection." she whispered. I need proof. Of what? She looked him straight in the eyes. Of what he did to her. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Vincent nodded slowly. Then we find it. Her grip tightened again, but not around the gun, around Hope, just enough to hold on. Vincent hadn't seen her in over a decade, but the moment Mrs. Dolores opened the door to her narrow brick apartment, she looked exactly the same, just smaller, more fragile, as if the years had shrunk her frame but not her memory. Vincent Langford, she said, her voice a raspy whisper of disbelief. You look like your father when he was about to lie. He smiled faintly. I probably am. She opened the door, wider. Then come in and lie where it's warm. Inside, the scent of old paper, lavender, and wood polish filled the air. Framed photos lined every shelf, none of them recent. Vincent spotted one of Elise tucked in a corner. She wore a plain, white apron, hair pulled back, eyes soft and shy. He stopped. That was the night of the gala, wasn't it? Mrs. Dolores nodded. The last night she worked in that cursed house. They sat at a small table cluttered with teacups and crossword puzzles. Vincent took a breath. I need to know what happened. To her, he said, I should have asked sooner. Mrs. Dolores fixed her gaze on him. You're 5 years too late, Mr. Langford. But Elise, she left things behind. Things I wasn't sure I should ever share. Until now. She shuffled to the hall closet and returned with an old tin box. Inside were small keepsakes, a hairpin, a bracelet, a cloth napkin with her initials embroidered faintly, and then a thin, worn Bible. The pages were frayed, the spine cracked. Mrs. Dolores opened it to the back cover and peeled back the liner. Taped inside was a torn half-page, yellowed, with age. On it, scrawled in blue ink, were just 3 things. Verity Hall, June 19th, ML. Vincent stared at it, the blood draining from his face. Do you know what that means? She asked. I do. Verity Hall was one of Martin's first private acquisitions, a large estate nestled in the countryside, once a wedding venue, later rumored to house corporate retreats and secret donor gatherings. It burned down in an unexplained fire 5 years ago. The fire started on June 19th. Vincent had dismissed it then as coincidence. A failed electrical system, an insurance claim. But now, seeing the date in Elise's handwriting and the initials, ML, his brother's mark, Elise knew. Something, Vincent whispered, something about the fire. Maybe even what caused it. Mrs. Dolores's voice trembled. She was scared, Vincent, but not for herself, for the baby. He looked up sharply. She told you? She didn't have to. She held her belly like it was a secret she'd already lost. And then she started hiding things. Notes, pages. That paper was the only one I ever found. I always feared there were more. Vincent turned the paper in his hand, his mind spinning. What happened at Verity Hall? He asked aloud. What was she trying to expose? Mrs. Dolores touched his hand gently. Whatever it was, it cost her everything. He left not long after, the Bible carefully tucked into his coat. Outside, the wind had picked up, sharp and insistent. In his chest, a different kind of wind stirred, something darker, something certain. Back at his car, he dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Detective Warner, came the gruff voice on the other end. It's Vincent Langford. Silence. I need access to the Verity Hall case file. Everything you've got, from the night of the fire until the moment. You closed it. Warner laughed bitterly. Closed? We never closed it. It just stopped being our problem when the right money changed hands. I'm changing that, Vincent said. I have something Elise left behind. Warner's voice sobered. Then meet me, tomorrow morning. Same place we met the first time. Vincent hung up, gripping the Bible tighter. Elise hadn't just vanished, she'd been silenced because she knew something that could destroy everything. And now, someone else was hunting that truth. He glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting. to see headlights that didn't belong. The girl, Elise's daughter, wasn't the only one preparing. So was he. The Langford offices occupied the top 3 floors of a steel and glass tower that scraped the clouds. Vincent hadn't stepped foot inside in over a year, not since he'd walked away from the family business. But today, he didn't hesitate. He bypassed the receptionist without a word and took the private elevator to the executive floor. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from fury he'd kept bottled for too long. The elevator doors slid open. Martin Langford stood at the window in his office, phone to his ear, back turned. The skyline glowed behind him, the empire they were born into stretching in every direction. "You could have called," Martin said without turning. "Storming into my office doesn't exactly scream diplomacy." Vincent closed the door behind him. Diplomacy stopped working when Elise disappeared. Martin froze for half a second, then turned slowly. His face was carefully composed, every line of his jaw taut with controlled annoyance. "She ran off, Vincent. That was settled years ago." "No, it was buried," Vincent said, stepping forward. "Like everything else that doesn't fit your narrative." Martin's eyes narrowed. "Is this about that stray you've been following around? The girl from the restaurant?" Vincent didn't answer. He pulled a small recorder from his coat pocket and placed it on the desk between them. Martin's lips twitched into something between a smirk and a sneer. "You really think you'll catch me saying something stupid?" "I don't need you to confess," Vincent said calmly. "I just need you to slip." Martin walked slowly behind his desk, running a hand along the leather chair. "I told you. The truth. Elise was unstable. She was infatuated. She thought if she got pregnant she'd get more than a paycheck." "And was she wrong?" Vincent asked. Martin's face darkened. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I think I do. I think she found out about Verity Hall, about the money laundering, about what really caused that fire." Martin's fist slammed against the table. "You think she was a saint? She was a maid. She read too much, snooped in drawers, wrote down names she didn't understand." Vincent's eyes sharpened. "She wrote down yours." That stopped Martin. He laughed once, cold, breathless. "What, did she hide a note in her Bible or something?" Vincent didn't blink, and that was the slip. Martin's jaw tightened. "Too late." Vincent stepped closer. That detail was never public. Silence fell between them. Heavy. Electric. Martin adjusted his cufflinks, buying seconds. "Even if you had something, no one would believe you over me." "I don't need belief," Vincent said. "I need truth, and you just gave me enough." Martin's mask cracked only for a moment. Then the old arrogance slid back into place. "Be careful, little brother. People who dig into the past often fall into it." "I'll take that risk," Vincent said, grabbing the recorder and pocketing it. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "She trusted the wrong Langford." Martin's voice was low, venomous. "And now her daughter will too." Vincent's blood ran cold. He didn't turn around, didn't give Martin the satisfaction. He walked out, heart pounding, chest tight. The war had begun. It wasn't just about Elise anymore. It was about the girl in the alley with the steady aim in her mother's eyes. And now, Martin knew she was alive. Ari didn't speak as Vincent approached. She stood beneath the flickering neon sign of a 24-hour laundromat, arms crossed, face unreadable. Her hoodie was soaked from the drizzle, but she didn't seem to notice. Vincent stopped a few feet away, uncertain whether she'd run or listen. "I know your name now," he said. "Ari." She didn't flinch. "Took you long enough?" He gestured to the small bench beside her. "Can I sit?" She shrugged. "You already followed me halfway across the city. Might as well." He lowered, himself beside her, careful to leave a respectful distance. "I confronted Martin," he said quietly.
He slipped. Mentioned something about a Bible. Something only Elise would have told him. Her head tilted slightly, just enough to show she was listening. "I recorded it," he added. "I have proof now. He's scared." Ari scoffed under
her breath. He's not scared. Men like him don't get scared, they get careful. There was silence between them, heavy but not hostile. After a moment, Ari spoke again. She was my mom, she said, her voice thin but steady. Elise. She didn't tell anyone about me. Not even you. Vincent's throat tightened. I didn't know, I swear it. She trusted you, Ari said, more to herself than to him. She used to talk about you when she thought I was asleep, said you had a good heart, said you could have saved her. Vincent lowered his gaze. I should have tried harder. I should have believed her. Ari turned toward him now, eyes sharp. But you didn't, you walked away, and because of that she died alone. Terrified. He nodded, accepting the blow. Yes, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. She studied him in the dim light, as if trying to peel back his words, looking for the lie. But there was none. I've been collecting things, she said after a beat. Photos, dates, names, things she hid in books and coat linings. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it until now. You were planning to expose Martin? Vincent asked. She nodded. I thought I'd do it on my own, quietly. But when I saw you at the restaurant, I knew I wasn't the only one still haunted. Vincent looked at her then. Really looked. Behind the anger, the armor, the grief was someone who had learned to survive without love. A child who became an avenger because no one came when her mother screamed. You're not alone anymore, he said. She looked away, jaw tight. We'll see. From across the street, a car slowed, headlights brushing over them briefly before moving on. Ari didn't move, but her hand shifted inside her pocket. You're being followed? Vincent asked. I've seen the same guy 3 times this week, she replied. Never close. Just watching. Vincent stood, the protective instinct in him sharpening. We need to move, now. Where? I know someone who can help us disappear long enough to finish this, but first, we organize everything you've got. Tomorrow, we make the first strike. Ari rose reluctantly, backpack slung over one shoulder. You really think we can bring him down? Vincent didn't hesitate. We don't need to bring him down completely, just far enough that the rest will come crashing. Ari nodded once. Then let's make sure he hears it when it does. The key still worked. Vincent hadn't stepped into the Langford private archive in over 5 years, but when the steel door creaked open with a reluctant groan, the air inside was still stale, with varnish and secrets. The archive was tucked beneath the main office building, a forgotten vault buried in stone and security. Only Martin, their late father, and Vincent had ever had access. It was where old paper lived. Handwritten agreements, trust deeds, bank ledgers, everything their empire had ever tried to bury under the illusion of legitimacy. Ari waited upstairs, with a burner phone and explicit instructions. If I'm not back in an hour, leave. He switched on the overhead fluorescents, and they flickered to life, casting long shadows across dusty rows of file cabinets and locked briefcases. Vincent moved, quickly, guided by instinct and the old mental map of where Martin used to hide the worst of it. 5th cabinet, left side, lower drawer. It groaned open under his hand. Inside, thick binders labeled in neat gold-embossed font. Donor retention, discretionary disbursements, international assets. Vincent pulled out the one marked personal expenditures. He opened to the flagged page near the back and stopped breathing. Line after line, written in crisp, unbroken script, detailed payouts to private investigators, hush funds labeled maintenance contracts, wire transfers to names Vincent didn't recognize. But the dates matched. One entry hit him like a fist. July 3rd, 20XX, $25,000. Private settlement for domestic matter, E.H., Elise Harper. Another, June 20th, 20XX, $50,000. Site restoration, fire claims, V. Hall and another, Aug 1, 20XX, $10,000. Officer Halverson, 9th Precinct. Consultation retainer. Vincent's vision blurred for a moment. This wasn't just an accidental cover-up. It was a machine, a system, carefully constructed and blood-oiled, and he'd been a cog in it. His name was on none of the transactions, but his silence, his refusal to question, to challenge, to see, had allowed it all to happen. He turned the page and found a note in the margin, Martin's handwriting unmistakable. "If she pushes further, double it. We can't afford another leak." His hands trembled. Elise had pushed, and she'd paid the price. He closed the ledger, heart hammering, in his chest. This was enough to destroy Martin. But it was more than that. It was enough to take down the Langford name, enough to unravel everything their family had built. He locked the binder in his own briefcase and relocked the cabinet. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye. An envelope pinned to the inside of the file drawer. Odd, out of place. He pulled it free. Inside was a photograph. Grainy, surveillance-style Elise, standing near a payphone, one hand over her belly. On the back, scribbled in ink, "She knows. It ends soon." There was no signature, no date. Vincent exhaled shakily. It ends soon. Not this time. As he climbed back up the narrow stairs and emerged into the chilled night, Ari stood waiting in the shadows near a parked car. Her eyes scanned, his face. "You found it." He nodded once, expression grim. "More than enough." Ari didn't smile. "Then let's burn him." Vincent opened the passenger door for her. "Tomorrow we go to the press. A private release. Everything documented." "What about the cops?" "They'll come after the headlines hit. Right now the truth has more reach than justice." Ari slid into the seat, her hand still in her pocket, still holding that small silver gun. Vincent looked at her one more time. "You don't need that anymore." She met his gaze. "Yes, I do, just in case." He said nothing, because maybe she was right. As the car pulled away into the dark, the briefcase resting between them, the Langford name had already begun to rot from the inside. The Riverbend district had always been a quiet scar on the city map, tucked just beyond the industrial zone, forgotten by planners, developers, and conscience. Burned-out buildings lined the streets like hollow bones. Nature had begun reclaiming the concrete. Ari didn't speak as they walked, her boots crunching over loose gravel and ash. Vincent followed her through a rusted chain-link fence and into the yard of what used to be Verity Hall's guest house, now just a blackened skeleton of scorched wood and caved-in beams. "This is where it happened," she said softly, stopping, in front of the charred foundation. The night she disappeared, Vincent scanned the ruins. There was no sign of life, no trace of Elise. Only ruin and silence. Wind whispered through shattered window frames like the breath of the dead. "No one ever searched here?" he asked. "Not really," Ari replied. "They said it was a utility fire. Martin paid off the first responder reports. Elise never existed on the property's staff records, no name, no body, no story. But you came here anyway," he said. Ari stepped carefully over a beam and knelt beside what used to be a garden bed. Her hands moved with practiced precision. As she brushed away dried leaves, then scraped at a patch of dirt beneath a cracked paving stone, she unearthed a small, rust-stained tin. "I used to play here," she said, "before things went bad. She told me if anything happened, if she didn't come back, I should come to the place with the lavender bushes and dig." She opened the tin. Inside was a tightly wrapped plastic bundle. She unsealed it with care, revealing a micro SD card. Vincent's breath caught. Ari glanced at him. "You said you wanted truth. This is hers." They returned to the car. Vincent plugged the card into his laptop. The file inside was marked only with the date, June 19th, the day of the fire. He clicked play. The screen filled with Elise's face. She sat in a dim room, hair pulled back, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and fear. Her voice was low and steady. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone. I didn't run. I didn't steal anything. I found something. Something Martin doesn't want out. Verity Hall is a front. He's been laundering donations and buying silence from people who should be protecting us." She paused, glancing over her shoulder. I confronted him. I told him I'd go to the press. He smiled, said no one would believe me. A maid with a swollen belly. Elise reached forward, touching the lens gently. To my daughter, I love you. I wanted better for you. I wanted you to grow up free from all of this, and to Vincent, if you're watching this, I hope you finally saw me. Not as a problem to be solved, but as a person who mattered. The video ended. The screen went dark. Vincent leaned back, the silence inside the car louder than any scream. Elise's voice still echoed in his head. I hope you finally saw me. I did, he whispered. God, I do now. Ari wiped her cheek quickly, then turned to him. We release this tonight, she said. No more delays. Vincent nodded, voice gravel thick. I'll send it to Warner and 3 reporters. We go public. It's time. Ari stared out the window, back toward the ruins of the house that had buried her mother. She wanted justice, she said. Now she'll have it. As the first raindrops tapped against the windshield, Vincent reached into the glove box and pulled out the flash drive they'd brought for backup. The past had spoken, and now the city would hear her too. It hit the news cycle like a thunderclap. The footage of Elise's final video played across national broadcasts by noon. By evening, it dominated every headline. Langford heir implicated in criminal cover-up. Elise Harper's final plea for justice goes viral. The maid who knew too much. The media storm didn't just touch the Langford name, it scorched it. Vincent watched it unfold from a distance, seated alone in a hotel suite with blackout curtains drawn tight. His phone buzzed every few seconds. Calls from investors, old family friends, even distant cousins scrambling for distance. His brother Martin had been arrested that morning. Wire fraud, evidence tampering, manslaughter under sealed review. The walls were closing in. Vincent had given everything to the press. The ledgers, the bank records, Elise's video, even the audio of Martin's slip about the Bible. No selective edits. No strings. He had exposed it all. But somehow it didn't feel like redemption. He turned from the news broadcast and stared out the window at the wet city. Below, cameras still camped outside the Langford building. Protesters held signs. People chanted Elise's name. The world had finally seen her, but she wasn't here to see it. A knock came at the door. He opened it to find Ari, hood up, shoulders tense, a small canvas bag slung across her chest. I just came to say goodbye, she said. Vincent stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. You don't have to disappear. I do, she said plainly. This part's over. You got your confession. They got their scandal. He studied her, trying to read beneath the surface. I want to help you, really help you. You're owed more than headlines and closure. She tilted her head. Like what? A trust fund? A condo uptown? I don't know. Something that gives you a life, a future. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was tired. You already gave me what I needed. He frowned. What's that? She took a breath. Your guilt. He blinked, unsure how to respond. You saw her too late, Ari continued. But you saw her. That's more than anyone else ever did. That's what she wanted. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim envelope, offering it to her. She glanced at it but didn't take it. It's not money, he said. It's a key, safety deposit box. Inside are the originals. Everything. Her letter, the Bible page, the ledger. You can decide where it goes next. It belongs to you now. Ari stared at him for a long time, then finally reached out and took the envelope. I won't need it for a while, she murmured, but one day someone else might. He nodded. Where will you go? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere without Langfords. She gave a dry chuckle. Maybe a place where people don't talk about bloodlines. Vincent stepped forward, hesitated, then gently placed a hand on her shoulder. If you ever need anything, call me. I won't, she said softly. But thanks. She turned to leave but paused at the door. Her eyes met his one last time. "You did the right thing," she said. "Doesn't erase what came before, but it counts." And then she was gone. No cameras followed her. No crowds called her name. She disappeared into the rain, the way her mother had once disappeared into fire. And Vincent stood alone, surrounded by the silence left in her wake. Public redemption. Private hell. The rain had stopped. It was one of those rare evenings where the city lights softened instead of screamed, and the sky, though still bruised with clouds, held a strange kind of peace. Vincent Langford sat alone at the same rooftop, restaurant where it had all begun, the table by the window. The staff recognized him, of course. They greeted him with tight smiles and unspoken questions, but they didn't ask for autographs anymore. Fame was a currency with a sharp expiration date, especially when soaked in scandal. He wore no tie tonight, no designer watch, just a black jacket weathered at the cuffs and eyes that had seen too much to be distracted by wine lists. The waiter came and Vincent ordered for two, again, lobster bisque, short rib, arugula salad, 2 desserts. He barely looked at the menu. The food wasn't the point. He just didn't want the table to feel empty. As the night unfolded around him, laughter rose from other tables. Birthday toasts, clinking glasses, shared selfies. But at Vincent's table only the wind made conversation, brushing past the tall glass panels like an old friend checking in. He ate slowly, methodically. When he reached for his glass of water, his hand paused mid-air. A shadow had appeared beside him. He turned. She couldn't have been more than 8. A girl with tangled curls and wide, cautious eyes. Her jacket was 2 sizes too big, her shoes mismatched. "Excuse me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. May I have your leftovers, sir?" Vincent's throat tightened. The air around him seemed to collapse. For a moment the world blurred, the present tangled with memory. But it wasn't airy. The girl had different eyes. Her voice lacked the edge of someone raised in fire. But the hunger was there, the quiet shame, the courage it took just to ask. He didn't speak. He simply nodded. Then carefully, gently, he pushed aside his plate and began boxing the food with a grace that surprised even him. No rush, no judgment, just a quiet kind of care. He added the still warm rolls, the untouched dessert. The girl stood still, watching his hands move with deliberate kindness. When he finished, he closed the lid and handed the box to her. She clutched it like treasure. "Thank you," she said. He met her eyes. "Be safe." She nodded and turned to go. He watched her walk across the terrace and disappear into the elevator without a backward glance. No one else seemed to notice, just another shadow moving past glass and glamour. But Vincent noticed. He sat back in his chair, hands folded, heart heavy, but lighter than it had been in years. He thought of Elise, of her laugh in the corridor, when she thought no one was listening. He thought of Ari, standing in the rain with justice clenched in her fist like a weapon no one else dared carry, and he smiled. Not with joy, not with peace, but with understanding. He had spent years building empires, then years trying to outrun the cost. In the end, neither saved him. But a moment of compassion, a plate of food, a quiet gesture, somehow felt closer to salvation than all the apologies in the world. The waiter returned with the check, paused, glanced at the empty chair across. From Vincent. "Shall I clear the second setting, sir?" Vincent shook his head. "No, leave it." As the city glittered beneath him and the wind whispered against the windows, he lifted his glass, not in celebration, but in remembrance, for what was lost, for what was found, and for those still walking hungry through the night. If this story resonated with you, hit like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from.